good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Man, this has been a while since I did this. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you're celebrating today. Happy Family Day, Happy Monday, all the days to you. But we're here to talk about all things Canada men's national team getting ready for their World Cup in the year 2026. We do have friend of the show. We're cousins, basically. We're basically cousins at this point. Um,
Exactly.
we just haven't traveled across the country to see each other yet, but that'll happen eventually at some point. But on the rise here, who does primarily Canadian content here. I am Africans. We do primarily Canadian African content. Every Monday or Sunday, it's going to be Canadian. Once we get midweek, it'll be something more fancy, but on the rise. Welcome back to the channel, your second home or third, who knows. How's the weekend going pre-snowstorm coming through?
Not too bad. A lot of talk about Canadian soccer and, of course, weather changes in Canada as per usual at this time of year in February, March season. But, we battle through it, right, with the allergies and everything that comes our way with the weather changes. But not too bad so far.
Not too bad. And speaking of Prince Hood, I said this when I saw it too. So confirm, is that the official World Cup ball in the background, sir?
It is the official World Cup ball, yeah.
Sir, look, living your prairie life, living well. Look at
Oh,
you
yeah.
go. Look at you go. But we are here talking about the Canadian men's national team. We have all four of the friendlies are set for Canada. We'll talk about that right off the bat, but then we're going to talk about some of the players who are looking well. I know there's a wee bit of a striker conversation to have. Who's in form? Who seems to be scoring in that? And then we're going to have a fun conversation near the end, which is talking about what we thought it would look like. And it's basically what's the prediction about the starting 11 that you totally got wrong for Canada. And if you want to apply it to somewhere else, feel free, because I know what my starting 11 was in 2020, right after the World Cup. I knew which players I wanted to go. And right now, I think I was right on some, I was wrong on others, but we'll talk about it as it's there. But as previously stated, we're here to talk about the Canadian men's national team, who have now all four of their World Cup friendlies are set. We have a date, we have opponents. And the simple question for you is, and we'll go through them here. We have Haiti on March. Well, that's wrong. Why is this always off? So you have March 31st, you have Canada versus Tunisia on. See, this always throws me off. I had it
That is
set
fun.
and then it just threw me off. So the Iceland is March 28th. Okay, cool. Okay, we're back in the game. And then on March 31st, it's Tunisia. And then on June 1st, it's Uzbekistan. And then on June the not first, why don't they, side gripe, why haven't we updated this website? Like it was here. It's Ireland, guys. They're playing Ireland. Okay,
Slightly
they're
outdated.
playing. It's anyways, those are the four friendlies. If you guys are listening to this was me just being confused. I'm like, I thought it said the thing, but it doesn't say a thing. It's June 5th in Montreal against Ireland, June 1st in Alberta, which I know a lot of
Mhm.
my friends are going to who are out west. And
Oh, yeah.
then the other two are in Toronto. So those are the four friendlies for Canada. And the question for you is, which matchup gets you excited? Which one are you intrigued about? I think we'll start there. Like, which matchup are you excited for Canada, and which matchup are you a little bit interested to see kind of how it goes?
I mean, on the basis of being able to attend a game finally, I'd say Uzbekistan. But, like, based off of quality, I'm going to have to say Ireland. Just the level of opponent and what we're going to face in the group stage, it kind of levels up to a bit of similarities, especially against
Mhm.
Qatar and Switzerland will probably be a little bit more back and forth, but they'll probably sit back and soak up pressure at times as well. But Ireland just have quality throughout their team in certain areas. They have some top level players in Troy Perry, Queen Kelleher, and net, and they're going to challenge Canada at what they struggle with and what they've shown weaknesses with, particularly against Australia, where Canada's been, well, probably our worst game in recent time. Couldn't break down a low block, suffered to create chances, had a big mistake. And then you look at Ireland, it's kind of the same kind of play style. So that's what I'm most excited to see because it's our final test, our final send off where we're going to really have to impress supporters because we were all hoping for Turkey. We were all hoping for that big opponent. We don't get it. We're all disappointed. It's a chance for Canada to really rise up and show their best against an Ireland side that's going to test them on their weaknesses. But Uzbekistan, Iceland, Tunisia, they're all good opponents. They're not high level opponents, of course.
Mhm.
They're right in that sweet spot where Canada can deal with them. Canada should be able to beat them, but it's going to be a really good test. And I'm just overall excited about who we've gotten. A little disappointed, of course, because
Mhm.
of no top level team or Turkey. But I do like this look of what we're going to play against. I am excited where we're playing some of the games. I think Commonwealth is long overdue to get their opportunity in Edmonton.
Mhm.
And Stad Saputo gets that send off game. And unfortunately, we don't get a game at BC Place or in Toronto or anything like that. But I think these are great opponents for this Canadian national team.
I think they're good opponents. That I do agree with. I think both the sides that they offer something that will challenge Canada. I think Tunisia as a side, again, an African side who knows how to play well defensively and knows, again, similar style to say in Australia, good solidly defensively. A few names to watch out, but if they win a game 1-0, 2-0, they'll be fine. They'll defend well. I think Iceland will offer some of that as well, where you're preparing for both a Qatar and who, depending on who you get coming out of the IC playoff. And Switzerland, again, I think high line defending is just going to create a route one direct out winger type football going through. I someone Sanson puts this here, and I think this is a fair point where we kind of bridge this conversation. Couldn't Canada find a better team than Iceland? Based off some of the things, just to address that there during some of the press conferences, I think I was about to say Herdman. It's been that it's been that long, but Marsh did bring up the point that they did have invites to play better teams, but they wanted to prioritize playing at home, and that's why they took the opponents that would play at home. And so that's why you don't have as many. And the other thing is, like you said, Lane, like the lack of large facility to host a marquee match like this is something that we are lacking in, right? And that's where like I was looking forward really to see what would happen with BC Place to see if they would get the grass in at the beginning of the year. I don't know, but since there is no game there, the assumption is grass ain't in. That's the only assumption that I can guess would be there. But you see that problem with Canada where we lack the large facility, and most of our facilities in Canada are our turf, are how am I forgetting words today on a Monday? Are not grass, right? They are artificial grass surfaces, and because of that, not many teams may want to play on them. I think that's why you get a team like Uzbekistan who maybe is more willing to play out there. Yes, it'll be June, it'll be beautiful out there in Edmonton, but the fact that we still lack a large grass stadium in Canada is a concern to me because I feel like that if anything from our from if anything for the legacy of this World Cup, yes, we can talk about the infrastructure there. If they had just said, "Hey, we're just going to take one of these grass stadiums and prop them up," even if it is BMO, yes, I know to the chagrin of every other Canadian outside of Ontario, but if they took that stadium and said, "Yeah, we're gonna pump this up and get this to say 30K, we're gonna get this up to 30,000 in capacity, even 32," I think that would have at least worked because then you at least have that, and then depending on what happens with BC Place, how long they keep the grass for, you open up opportunities for windows there. But the lack of grass stadiums for these things does affect it, and especially in a country where you're trying to build the excitement, the hype for it. You want to play games at home. So I can understand the frustration for some fans who think, why couldn't we get a bigger team? It kind of does limit it when your stadium sizes are either BMO, Saputo, and then your next games you're playing are one in Commonwealth, and then the next is back in Montreal at a smaller stadium. What are you hoping for in terms of just as an overall thought process with getting like a proper stadium or a larger facility for Canada? That can only help the sport grow in the country, can it not?
I think like it's very difficult now, right? Because without the
Mm,
world, like the legacy project without the World Cup now. I don't see us getting that major stadium for Toronto FC or Vancouver
Mm,
Whitecaps. We see the financial state Vancouver Whitecaps are currently in,
yep.
and how long of a wait would it be for a major stadium for them? What, 3-4 years minimum, I'd guess, with the time to build a massive stadium like that would be. And when you look around Canada, like you say, there's just a lack of major stadiums. Like after BC Place, there's Stade Saputo, but you look to the prairies for the next biggest stadiums. You have
Mm,
Commonwealth, then you have in Winnipeg, and Mosaic and Regina are the next biggest stadiums that are football CFL stadiums, but are turf, like you said. And they can host these types of games. They can get a large sum of fans, 30,000 plus, which would be a great turnout, which would probably sell out in the prairies because we never get those opportunities. But
yeah.
what teams are going to want to go to Regina and Winnipeg, respectfully? Like, it's not an easy travel, it's connecting flights. Very rarely you're going to get a direct flight to Saskatoon, to Regina, to Winnipeg. It's just not going to happen. So those big stadiums are going to be obviously overlooked. And then you have to look to BC, to Toronto, to Edmonton, and Montreal. And I just don't see us building that next big grass stadium for this country. I think it's a major issue we've run into with this World Cup. We should have, once we knew we were getting a World Cup, there should have been that project to have a lifetime legacy project around a grass
Yeah.
stadium in Canada. And probably that would have had to be in BC, the easiest place to year round build a stadium with the weather conditions. And it would make sense having the Vancouver Whitecaps there, having probably outside of Ontario and Quebec our hub for the national team where players come from and players build out of, because Vancouver's been so good at developing talent in this country. But it's really a huge missed opportunity for the national team. You're going to lack the opportunity to bring in Germany's, England's on a regular
Hmm.
basis with the split of financials. And if BC Place doesn't have grass implemented on a year-round basis, it's going to really hurt the ability to be able to split 50-50 for revenue and gate revenue. So it's going to really hurt the CSA. It's going to really hurt this national team to be able to consistently bring in those big nations to attract and build in the casuals that we've been targeting for so many years. And it's going to hurt this national team for years not to have that legacy stadium. I just don't see how that happens now in the future unless Vancouver can somehow swindle a stadium there in a next year, 2 years, 3 years, because then you're going to lose the Whitecaps more than likely as the conversation is going. And I
Hmm.
just don't see how Toronto is going to build a bigger stadium than BMO when they're just slipping lipstick on the stadium right now for the biggest tournament in world sports. It's a mind blowing situation that we're in with Canada soccer.
It is. I mean, you can still celebrate like, hey, we got a new CSB, our Canadian media, whatever it's been rebranded to, agreement, which is great for the national team in that sense. But for the again, for just being able to have a space where it's hey, 30k would be nice. Like a 30k would just be ideal where it's enough that it's big enough and it's small enough. But for Canada, that'd be big. But like thinking like something like Mosaic, if that was grass, oh, we're cooking with grease here. Like life is good here. But it's unfortunate it's not there. Maybe comes afterwards. That's a lot of hoping. That's a lot of that is indeed a lot of hoping that it works
Lots of
out for that.
maybes.
Yeah, lots of maybes and hopes, but that's where it becomes problematic there. Couldn't Canada play against like South America opposition, even New Zealand playing a Common Bowl and UEFA team at home? They did that. They did that all last year,
Yeah.
right? Right. They played Colombia in New Jersey. They played no, they played Ecuador in Toronto. They played Venezuela in Miami. They played
Australia.
Australia in Quebec. They played those teams already, and so there's a degree where they're prepped for that, but the other teams they wanted to play just timing, right? And that's where the schedule will always play against you, right? You want to play African teams. Well, they're getting ready for AFCON. So you can't really play them per se. or you're looking to that March window where you're wondering, hey, what's going on? Hey, could you play some teams here? Could you not? Most, like looking at the African sides, most African sides are going to Europe for that. Some of them are coming to the States, but most of them are coming to Europe and are playing games there. Tunisia is taking the long flight to Toronto, and it's a good for you guys. So I think teams are available. I'm just wish there was a little bit more, but we'll have to wait and see for that legacy project. For that, you talked about teams that you're excited for, and I am I'm curious, like you said, with Ireland, and then say like a Tunisia playing them. Iceland is interesting in that sense. I, I understand so that New Jersey is it's not Canada. I get that, but it's relatively easier, and that was a game that Colombia was running there. So I don't necessarily it was close enough and relatively close enough for that, but
It was an away game as well.
it was
Yeah.
right. Uzbekistan, like that's the game going to Alberta. That game intrigues me because it's a side that, again, this is their first World Cup. This is a side that if you followed them through youth tournaments, they've been producing youth teams, quality youth teams. I remember Canada took a nice number from them, and back in 2023 would have been at the U17s, but they've been fried. And so seeing them at this level is something where you say, okay, this is definitely a team that finally gets the breakthrough thanks to the overwhelming a widening of the pool of the amount of players and the teams really that are coming in. But a game against Uzbekistan, I'm curious to see what that looks like because I know some people have preconceived notions on okay, they're playing Iceland. Iceland may not be the Iceland of 2016. That's 10 years ago. That's wild to me. Uh, Iceland in the Euros. I was working at a summer camp that summer, and I had one French guy and I had one Portuguese guy, and they were just like, "Yo, we beat them in France," and we all laughed at England that tournament. But that Uzbekistan matchup is intriguing for me because it's a side that not many people are familiar with, and I think that's a side where it's right before the World Cup. There will be a lot of energy for that game, but I think that could be a low key a game that if they don't take it and they don't prepare for it well, which I'm sure they will, the result might surprise people because I do like what Uzbekistan has done over the past few years, and I wonder if Canada on paper should be a good side and it should be the better side, but I wonder if they take that side there. Like we've talked about Ireland, but what do you think about that Uzbekistan matchup? Do you think that's one where it could be a low key the game of the friendlies where like actually this game was really fun?
I think this might be like one of the more entertaining games out of all of our friendlies. Like the most like when you look at Iceland, when you look at Ireland, they're gonna both set up to be defensive. When you look at Uzbekistan, they'll of course be defensive, but they'll want to come at Canada. They'll want to prove a point. Like you said, it's their first World Cup. This is probably their second last game before the
Mm-hmm.
World Cup as well. I'm assuming in relative to our schedule as well. So Uzbekistan will want to prove a point against a World Cup host, and this will more than likely be a sellout crowd at the Commonwealth because it is a huge area that a lot of supporters are going to travel to, drive to, and be at for this game. So it's going to be an electric crowd. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. And I think it's going to translate down to the players. Like, I think this is going to be a quick, exciting, fun game to watch, unlike some of our other friendlies. And
Mm-hmm.
Uzbekistan, like you said, are really rising through competitions, are really bringing through young, talented players. And it's a continent or a confederation that kind of gets overlooked in terms of the world sport. Like everyone looks to the European, the UEFA, then they look to South America, then they probably look to the AFCON, and then it's probably Asia and North America that gets looked at next for football. Like we are the afterthoughts in a sense for the
Mm-hmm.
continents, and Uzbekistan doesn't get talked about as much as they should have. Like you say, like you look at one of their best players in Kushinov. He's been fantastic for Manchester City, and he has just been unbelievable for Uzbekistan. The reason why they're traveling so far, why they're made the World Cup, why they're playing such good football. They played fantastically well through qualifying. And I think you're completely right. If Canada doesn't come into this game ready, if they don't look at this as a major test, which they should, because Uzbekistan made the World Cup and everything like that. They could get rolled over, they could get beat, and that is something you don't want heading into a World Cup against an opponent, which you can kind of find similarities to how Canada was qualifying for their last World Cup.
Hmm.
Both teams recently just making their first World Cup in, well, for them, first one, but for us, basically forever. And it's just kind of a good translation to how both teams are, where they both are in their development. And Uzbekistan squad is kind of like Canada was back then as well. A little bit different kind of play styles, of course, but it's a strong Uzbekistan national team. And I think it's once Canadians and casual supporters start looking at that squad and see, oh, there's a star player from Manchester City. Oh, there's some other good players in this team as complementary players. Then I think the hype will build up around this game more, because the atmosphere is already going to be there in Edmonton at the Commonwealth. And I think if these players come out and ready for a good game, it's going to be electric. It's going to be fast, unlike our other friendlies that we already have planned.
Most definitely. I think that's how, hey, give some hype for the players, give some hype for the team. I think that's all you can ask for. Give the fans something that they can enjoy, something that they can sink their teeth into, and then maybe, maybe you get the country to start dreaming, and then, they play either like they play either Wales or Italy in the first round, and then everyone's just like,
Fuck yeah.
what's going on? And Woodbridge comes out. They're like, what? Always, always we're there. But no, I think that Uzbekistan game is so intriguing to me. I know the Ireland main game is gonna be fun. Hey, nothing says a fun time like Irish, French, Canada, and football. All you couldn't ask for more, right? The songs will be great, the poutine will be great, and beer will be drank. And that's just the reality of it. And I like that. But how are you feeling with that? You know the four friendlies, and I know it's not the big names that we can, but in terms of the overall preparation and the team, how they were playing in the friendlies before, you kind of I don't mind them going this route. Yes, they could have had better teams, but like you said earlier, the one thing they struggled with was breaking down low blocks. So guess what? They're either going to play teams that think that they don't have the possession to do it, or they're going to play teams that fear the speed and say, "How do we neutralize the speed? Give you the ball, and then we can cover in better spaces." So two, maybe three cracks at the can of breaking down the defensive block. Show me you can do it. I'm someone who's always saying, "You one result, cool. Show it to me consistently before I believe it." And so, for that matter, I don't mind this lineup, right? Iceland, I mean, yes, you could have had better teams than Iceland, but Iceland, Tunisia, Uzbekistan, Ireland, that's a good set. Hopefully Ireland makes the World Cup, so it's like, hey, it's our prep game too, and then they'll be somewhere in the states probably. But I think it's a good setup. Good thoughts as well in terms of how they're playing and especially breaking down the low blocks.
Yeah, I think it's as good as it can get is the best way to put it. Yes, there's
Mm-hmm.
disappointment, but when you review it with a calm head after seeing everyone that was announced, I think it's a good lineup of teams we're playing, because as much as it would be nice to play Germany, to play England, France, and get a 0-0, a 1-1, or maybe scrape a win, what if you look at the other way? What if we get battered 4-0? What if we get battered 1-0 and hardly have a touch of possession? Yes, that's unlikely, but it's a possibility as well. And can you imagine going to Stade Saputo? France plays us off the park. We hardly touch the ball, and confidence is at an all-time low going into the World Cup. That helps out nobody. It helps out no supporters besides the casuals saying, wow, we saw Kylian Mbappe. Like, that
Mm-hmm.
helps nobody on the team to say we got absolutely blown away by elite nation. So I think it's a very smart move to play teams where we've struggled against. And by breaking down a low block, if we can address that in these four friendlies, I think it is a very smart move by Jesse Marsh and Kevin Blue to get good nations, not great nations, that will stump us on what we've struggled with for so long.
Agreed. And speaking of players and coaches, we do have to talk about the players, right? And we're not going to focus on one. I think there's two interesting names for Canada soccer right now on the men's side, which are interesting. We finally, Marcelo is home. Okay, Marcelo is finally has finally decided to file his one-time switch. So that saga, for whatever you thought it would be, is over. Marcelo is there, so he's an option for the CANMNT. And then Kyle Laren's move. Like this year was interesting in terms of Canadians getting moves in January. It felt like an entire starting 11 and change moved, and they've all kind of started going well. I know Jason Russell Rowe starting to get some minutes, some appearances in League Iron, but from Marcelo to Laren, what do you want to cover first? Do you want to cover Marcelo first, or do you want to cover Laren first?
I'll let you choose the path.
If you insist, choose my adventure. Let's let's start with the more intriguing one, Marcelo Flores. Right, as a prospect, exciting. Right, as a left winger, very exciting. He's a player, and I remember I did a podcast with, man, here's a, it's odd saying that this is a name from the past, but this is true. Like Josh from JJD TV. We did a podcast together, and the point I brought up with him was back in 2021-22, we had a lot of interesting dual national names for Canada that were all leaving or taking different choices, right? That's the era of Stefan Mitrovic, who goes to Serbia, right? You had Marcelo Flores, who went to Mexico. Ishmael Kone chose to stay for Canada, though he had Cote d'Ivoire options at some point. And then right around that time, you have to remember Jesse Costa was playing U17 for Canada, and then he played U17 for Portugal, and it was back and forth. And Lucas Dias was also a name that we were wondering about. The profile of that attacking midfielder is something that we haven't used or haven't had one for Canada in a very long time. And so his inclusion is very intriguing. If he's not playing in the middle, he's definitely a left wing option. And then that gets into the conversation of, well, where does he fit? But in terms of the profile of the player, right, where do you feel that he fits best on the Canadian men's national team? Is it in that midfield? Is it out wide? Is it Cam, i.e., striker number two? Where do you think a player of that type of profile would fit in?
I think currently for Marcelo Flores, we haven't seen him used enough as a 10 in the
Mm,
midfield for Tigres. So I'd have to still say out wide. Whenever I've seen him play for Tigres lately this season, it's always been off that left midfield role. It's always been off that left flank, cutting in, using his dribbling. And I still feel like that's his best role currently. I think maybe he gets molded to be an attacking midfielder. But I
mm,
think with his mix of pace and footwork, it makes him a very exciting left winger or left midfielder, and something that we don't really have in our play pool or player pool. Like we have the Schaffelberg, Tejon Buchanan, electric transitional pace, but with Marcelo Flores, he has speed, but also he has the footwork that is something we haven't really seen in the player pool. Maybe a younger Junior Hoylett had that, but
mm.
Marcelo Flores has that trickery that you can't really just teach. It's kind of just something you grow up with. It's that quick feet, being able to take on a player in close spaces. And I mean, he's done it so many times against Forge. He's done it in Liga, Mackie, and he's played really well to start the year. But it's something that is so exciting to watch where Jesse Marsh is going to play him, because we've seen him have Jonathan David drop in as a 10 and come into the half spaces. We've seen Ishmael Kone used there, Jonathan Osorio, Junior
Mhm.
Hoylett, and none of them are number 10s. And Marcelo Flores can play the 10. He's done it at previous clubs. But right now I see him as a left winger, but I'd love to see us try him as a 10, but I just don't think now would be the right time to switch things up and use Marcelo Flores there.
I think he becomes interesting as you throw up at his transfer market profile, and again, primarily on the left side, though he has played some cam and then some right winger. I think, and I see you, Prince, with the Ali Ahmed point, and I think that's a fair point. I think that's a very good apt comparison. Also, really, Junior Hoylett slander. Junior Hoylett was always a 10. The streets will remember. Okay, the man could be a 10 for Canada right now if he wanted for 30 minutes a match. Okay, at high levels, but I think He's interesting to me, especially when you look past the starting 11. And we'll talk about starting 11s versus 11s that we thought would be. I mean, if you move off Ahmed, I mean, after that, a player like a Jaden Nelson or a him or a Marcelo, that's a fair conversation to kind of break through. If you're saying who comes on for a, if you need him to go on the right, Tejan has to come off after a game, right? Is that a player that you would trust in that type of a space, or are you looking for someone else? You already have Liam Miller coming back, and that's where I'm very much intrigued. The winger depth and the fullback depth are something I think on the national level. I'm a lot more concerned about the fullback depth because to me, you have three fullbacks right now who are healthy. And then after that, you have a lot of fullbacks that you haven't been given run. When you get to the wingers, right? Nelson's been given a little bit of run, but Ali Ahmed and Tejan, those are your starting wingers. I don't think that's too far fetched of an idea. But behind them, Liam Miller, who's finally back from injury, I think that's fair. Jaden Nelson, who's finally back, and then who's going to start up in Austin this year. And then after that, you have a conversation of either some young players coming in, or to me, the roster really comes down to it's Schaffelberg or Marcelo. And I know that Marsh has a particular type of player that he likes. High work rate, always will press, can create on indirect football and direct attacking. But it's not that I like the flair. Give me a technical player who can create something out of nothing that isn't just put the ball in this space and let me use my pace around it. Because I think moving players versus going past them offers you so many more angles and opportunities. So I think he's very intriguing for me as maybe that winger 3/4 for me, because I think if you need a different look in that sense, right? I think that's very intriguing for me for what he could do and how he can kind of fit into that. But based off of that, it sounds as if you are including him in your final 23 or 26, sorry, for this summer's World Cup. Is that too much of an assumption to make? Or do you think
No.
that he has more players to leap over before he gets to that point?
Yeah, I'd say you're pretty accurate. Like, I just don't see why he'd make that one-time switch now if he was in doubt to not making the squad. I'm not saying he's locked in or Jesse has told him he's for sure in the squad, but like there must be some kind of inkling that like with his form at this moment in time making that switch that he is in pole position to make this squad right now. And I do have
Mhm.
him as my winger 3/4, just like you. It's him or Miller coming in on that left or on the right as a substitute because someone still has to get subbed on for Tejon Buchanan as well. Like Tejon can run all game, but he does regularly not go full 90s with Villarreal as well. So you bring Marcelo or Liam onto either flank, they can both do a job on either role. So
Mhm.
call them either a three, either a four. It works for me, but I agree with you. I think he's the better option instead of Schaffelberg. And we could also say, in some sense, I know he's never played up there, but could he be a rotation piece or a substitute for Jonathan David to drop off and play as a kind of a false nine, as we've seen before with Junior Hoylett, if Hoylett or Jason Russell Rowe is not in the squad, just as an idea.
I think he offers you that. I still think I would like Hoylett there versus, I mean, based off how Marsh is picking his teams, I think it's Hoylett or Marcelo Flores. Jason Russell Rowe finally got some shine after the Copa America. So I don't know if that's an option based off how he's picking players. But based off of talent, hey, he's in Liga. Now he has an opportunity to push and see if he can get some consistent minutes, make some moments there, and then get called in. But I think that second, because that's the thing, right? If you're gonna play another forward or player in that Jonathan David role, you need someone whose touch is there consistently because you need that to build up and go. And that's not something you would consistently say about Kyle Aaron. And the other nines, as much as they could, be build up nines, they aren't necessarily nines that are going to drop as deep as a Jonathan David. So yeah, a Junior Hoylett, a Marcelo Flores, I think that's a fair shout for hey, 75th minute. Hopefully the game is well at hand or it's still drawn 0-0 or 1-1. to change something up, bring something more dynamic in the middle, which then creates for your wing play, creates for your nine that's going through. I think that would be ideal for me there. Outside of that, I mean, you got Promise David, who's doing nothing but Promise David things. You have Jebison, who's been in and out of the lineup based off of just what he's been doing at Press North End. And then you had, we said Jason Russell Rowe starting to get minutes. Kyle Aaron.
Feel there.
I mean, all right, let's talk about Sir Kyle. Let's talk about Sir Kyle, who just it felt like a minute ago wasn't getting minutes, goes to Southampton and has 2 goals in what, 2 games? It feels like
Yeah.
2 goals in two. It feels like that. For you, what would he have to do to play himself into? Is the rotation the word I want to use? No, I wouldn't say rotation. Let's be flagrant with this. What would he have to do to get back into the starting 11? Does he have to score for the rest of the year? Like a goal a game? The man has to be a goal a game for the rest of the year?
For me, I don't know what he'd have to do to get back in starting lineup. I almost have him penciled like in that bubble of like the striker realm
Mm-hmm.
because there's so right now for me it's Jonathan David, Tani Oluwase, and Promise David. Those are your locks, and then you figure out who is 4 and 5. I think because Jesse Marsh has tended to bring 5, but I think the last camp he brought 4, like our actual
Mm-hmm.
last camp, which was a
Yeah.
shock. But it's really puzzling to me what Kyle Laren's going to have to do because it's very awkward to see how he fits into this squad. Whenever he's had an opportunity to play alongside Jonathan David, it's looked like it lacks chemistry. It looks like they're bumping into each other's space, like they're operating in the same areas.
Mm-hmm.
And that just doesn't work at a World Cup, right? But in some sense, it would be nice to have Laren's World Cup experience. We talk about World Cup experience so much, and players talk about in the past how different it is to be at a World Cup, how much of a change it is to be at a World Cup. You're with the team for so long, the chemistry needs to be there, the experience is huge, and Laren could bring that. Like he could be your Cavallini player, for a lack of better words. He is, of course, a lot better than Cavallini. He'd probably get a chance to score goals, so he's on form. For me, it's not if he makes the starting lineup, it's more so making the squad. Because I think he can play a role for this team. And as a substitute, I just don't know how he starts for this team. Problem is, David isn't having maybe not as good of a year as last year in terms of goals and assists, but he is scoring better goals and having better all around performances with what he's doing during a match. Tani Oluwase is a tough one to talk about because, in some sense, he deserves a lot more minutes. He's been robbed of game times in certain senses because of who's around him and Mika Katatse and the other strikers they do have in Jared Moreno. But he hasn't been given a true chance. He hasn't been given a true role to get more minutes in Villarreal. So if Kyle Larin does score consistently, if he does score on a regular basis and keep up this form, it's pretty hard to argue that Tani should be starting ahead of him because of league reputation and league merit. Yes, Kyle Larin has been in a poor run with Canada. Yes, he's had a poor run in some clubs. But if he's firing on all cylinders in England with a really good squad, gets them into the playoffs or just about, and scores next to a goal every other game, I don't know how we can talk about him not making the squad when a player in Tani's position isn't scoring that often, isn't been given that many minutes, is kind of a super sub in some sense for Villarreal. Yes, a team battling at the top of the division, but isn't getting many minutes. So Kyle Larin could easily work his way for this World Cup team as my third option behind Promise and Jonathan and be a fourth rotation with Tani Oluwase. It's just who does he play next to is the big question for me because with Jonathan David, he's tended to step on his toes on where they want to play. We haven't really seen him have a true run with Promise. We haven't seen him have a run with Tani. So that's my only concern. But I do think he could actually work his way into that forward 4, to put it in for lack of better words.
The forward 4. So, and in that case, then I kind of want to put you on a spot with that point. Then, if you think he is, because taking bits of it. You did say you think that he's a player that would probably, for you, it's less about starting and more so about making the squad. Who are your four? Well, assuming that Marsh takes five, who are your five strikers for Canada then?
I think the four are almost probably a lock. Like Tani, Jonathan, Promise. And I think it gets interesting with the other ones because Daniel Jebison was on a hot form for a little bit before December, and then he's kind of
Mhm.
fallen out again once lately. And Theo Bear's injury has really come at the wrong time with the March squad coming up and not getting that last
Yeah.
opportunity to show what he's got because he was on such an incredible year. And outside of them, if Jason Russell Rowe can get a run of form, then I can see himself working into this five because Marsh has tended to go with five, but maybe Marsh goes with five, but brings in Junior Hoylett as that extra number nine, as a kind of a decoy Jonathan David replacement, as we talked about for so long, because it's kind of tough to make an argument for Daniel Jebison on the form he's in. It's tough to pitch Theo Bear when he's injured, and you can't really fully back Jason Russell Rowe while he's getting 15, 20 minutes here and there. And that might pick up come the end of the year. But maybe I'll pencil in Junior Hoylett as my fifth in case I don't know
Mhm.
if I'm forgetting another striker outside of those three and Kyle Laren. But I know Jesse Marsh has talked about that there will be difficult decisions to make. Some players will be left out that will be shocks or surprises. He said that I think in January at Camp Poutine in an interview that there will be surprise players left out. And who knows, that might have been towards Kyle, that might have been towards Hoylett, or even Jonathan Osorio. But you can't leave out Kyle Aaron with the form he's in, playing in such a physically demanding league in Southampton. I'll even admit I'm one who thought Kyle Aaron was going to be nowhere near this roster. But if he can keep this up, I'm not saying he starts, but like you said, he's got to be in that five just with the form he's on right now.
Fair and valid points. I think it'll be tough. You mentioned those three players. Out of those three, if they said last spot goes to Laren, Hoylett, or Osorio, you know where I stand there. Give me Junior. Give me Junior 10 days out of five. I I I I just feel like on the ball, he's just something that you need. You need the calmness, but you also need the poise, right? Which same thing, but they're different. Trust me. And so for me, like that is interesting. I think Joe David, that's a lock. I think Tanny's a lock, and I think Promise is a lock. I think those three are locks. And then it comes down to I know they don't play him as that, but I think he's a perfect, like we said, Hoylett is the perfect replacement for Joe David. So if you count him as a four, that's four. And then it's Jebson versus Kyle Laren. Well, I mean, at least for now, we can look at them and say, hey, they're both in the same league. So may the best man win that. I think based off of traits, I think off of traits, he takes Jebison, right? Because he likes the work rate. He likes the speed. He likes being able to cover the spaces like that. And as a nine, he he populates his space a lot better where that allows and that's the underrated thing, right? Both we haven't seen them play together often, but both Promise David and to an extent Daniel Jefferson don't normally go into the space that Joe David will be in. And so that allows him to be that de facto or that false 10, if you want to call it that, and then drop all the way deep, build up, touch the ball, start to build up from there. Then you have a nine that's there. Now, is there that their final product? That's going to be a question because at the end of the day, you can look as great. Is the ball going into the net? Because if the ball's going into the net, we don't complain too much about it. But if they aren't able to, or if the crosses are poor, or if to bring out bad memories, if Jebison has a game like he had against Cote d'Ivoire, where the gears are moving, but maybe the body isn't at the same level what he's trying to do, and he runs out of space too much time, that's going to create a conversation point where it's I am not sure if he's a player who's going to fit there or can fit well, but all Laren is doing is making it a conversation. I think you can't fault the player for that, right? His form is picked up, and that's what you want right before a window. Look at you go, right? Right before a June window. I mean, sorry, March window. Now we're getting conversation points. but I'm pretty excited to see how it turns out. I know we'll read a lot into who gets called up. Do you have any players for yourself that you think could receive a call up that would surprise us in this March window? Or are you thinking we know the 26 or 27 or 28 players it'll be out of, and we're gonna live life there? No justice for Jaquil Marshall-Rutty. No, as a right back. No, nothing.
No, I think it's pretty set in stone right now. Like the only one you could have seen was Jason Russell Rowe. Like that could be the only shock, really, especially with Bear injured, Daniel Jebison not on form. Maybe he gets brought in as the fifth number 9 to get another training experience to see if he can impress once again. But
Mm.
that could be Junior Hoylett who comes in and takes that fifth striker role as well because he's already got 2 assists in 2 games at Swindon Town. So it's it's really a debate on who comes in at that fifth striking role. But like we've talked about, those are kind of your bubble of who's it going to be. With Theo Bear injured, with Daniel out of form, kind of gets you down to 2 others. So I don't see any major shocks unless Jesse throws out a dual national like Luca Kolyosho, who we'd all lose our minds over. But I just don't see any dual nationals that we know of. Unless center backs throw up a shock and Moise Bombito is somehow miraculously better or healthy again in time to play for Canada. But I don't see any shocks that could come up in this window.
That and I'm there. I mean, center backs wise, Derek Cornelius, Alfie Jones, Luke DeFougerolles, like Joel Waterman, Jamie Knight LaBelle. Like I'm feeling pretty good about that. Again, I will continue to bang the drum. The fullback depth, I am concerned because it's just Richie, Davies, and
Jaquil.
Alistair Johnston, right? That's your those are your fullbacks who are healthy right now. And yes, Zoran Pasong season is always a season. So never forget Zoran.
It's
But
always alive.
he's alive and running, and hey, the coach trusts him. It was good to see him against Guatemala, but you were happy to see that there. So now that we've covered that, guys, leave your comments if you want to comment on anything here. But this this is kind of this is where we get to the fun because I get to make fun of myself or say I still believe I still believe in Joel Hendry and everything else. 2022. Do you remember what the Canadian starting lineup was versus Croatia at the World Cup?
No, and I don't want to.
Well, I will tell you, good sir. I will tell you, good sir. You know what? Let me show you. Let me show you the life we lived 4 years ago in the winter. All right. This was the starting 11 in that fateful day, right? You had in goal, you had Milan Borjan. Good name that. Kamal Miller, Stephen Vittoria, Alistair Johnston. He's a right back. Stop playing him as a center back. In the middle, you had Alfonso Davies as a wing back, Stefan Eustachio, who was injured but gutted it through, Atiba Hutchinson, the legend himself, Richie Larea. Then up top, you had Tejan Buchanan, Kyle Laren, Joe David. And this was the game where we started with such hope, and then Kamaric happened and Perisic happened too, and it was painful. But I bring this up because after that World Cup, I am someone who notoriously, like I want this to be very clear, I don't celebrate things. I'm that terrible person who's like, once something is done, on to the next. So I never really enjoyed the World Cup because while the World Cup was happening, I was like, okay, who's going to be my team for like 2026? And they're like, who do we need to come through? Who are the names we're excited about? Oh, we could see this player, we can see that player. And I remember what my lineup for 2026 was. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at what we thought the 2026 lineup would look like versus what it's looking like now. Players we were high on, players that we had forgotten about, other things of that nature. And we want to go through that there. So, Lane, you had fun going back through that 2022 cut list. The overall is that there were names that we've forgot were things, but hey, names were there. What was I think your favorite name from looking at that roster and saying, I forgot about this player? Like what was the name that you forgot about 4 years ago was a big thing in Canada soccer for you?
There's a few. Probably Io Akinola, um, Jaden Nelson, Charles Andreas Brim. Like there's some names that truly stand out in there. Like you even see Daniil Henry back then when he just didn't make that squad. Like there was so many names. Jason Lutweiler, like some of the names just travel you back in time. Like the difference between the player pool we're talking about being cut now compared to players who were cut before. We're talking player in Oldham Athletic or a
Mm.
player who was even unattached FC. We had a multiple players at unattached FC. We haven't even had to talk about that since 2021. How refreshing does that feel? But like it is so good to see the difference in player pool now. No offense to the Tyler Pashers of the world, the Harry Paytons of the world back then, because they were good for the national team when they're there, but now it is such a night and day difference to the players who are cut now and the players we're talking about now. Now we're talking about does a player in Liga make it? Does a player in the championship make it? Unlike a player who is without a club or a player who's coming off a major injury, like it's just mind blowing to see the difference in the players who were cut.
It's definitely it's a different life we were living, but it's also somewhat similar to the life. There's familiarity in the familiar names, and I'm pulling up that roster right here to talk about it because it's an interesting thing to think about. We had goalkeepers: Dane St. Clair, Alistair Johnston. Goalkeepers. You had here are the players: Dane St. Clair, Alistair Johnston, Sam Adekubi, Kamal Miller, Stephen Vittoria, Sam Piet, Stephen Eustachio, Liam Fraser and Liam Miller, the Liam boys. We could have had it all, Wayne. We could have had it all. Cavallini is your nine. Hoylett, Tejan Buchanan, Ike Ugbo. Came on for a minute. That's a story. Came on for a minute. Atiba Hutchinson, Mark Anthony, K, Return of the Mac, not returned. Ishmael Kone, James Pantemis, he comes in because remember, Kaipo breaks his leg in the MLS finals, and I think he should have started at least one game in that World Cup, but I digress. Kyle Laren, Milan, Davies was coming off of myocarditis and was starting to play finally. Liam Miller, David Wotherspoon. You remember the spoon? You remember the cut, the chop back spoon? Listen, memories. Memories were here. Derek Cornelius, who I feel made every roster in 2022 and never played. He played in Jamaica the one time and then never. That was like my one going back
In the
to
worst
2022.
conditions.
That was no. We're not going to complain about conditions here. We're Canadian. We don't. We've grown from this. Okay, we're mature now.
Have we?
We don't complain about conditions. He played in Jamaica, but I remember losing my mind over Derek Cornelius being a healthy center back and never playing him, and he was always just there. And at that point, I was like, if you're not going to play him, go bring someone else, please. Like because the kid was talented, and hey, guess what? A few years later, the kid is talented. Free kick versus Wales. I see the outs. I see the outs. But
Okay, but if we're going to talk about conditions, I think we got to ask Liam Miller what he thinks about that under John Herdman.
Liam Miller was that era was basically players who like, can you fit in a 3-5-2? Okay. Can you not? Okay. Because if you're a winger in that, you're either a striker or you better hope you're defensively sound because they need that cover. They needed that cover. But that roster, that it brings back, and there were names that we were surprised didn't make it, right? Scott Kennedy didn't make it, who then was like a pairing of Scott Kennedy and Kamal Miller to me was like, oh, that's the future of the center backs for Canada. Easy. That's a spoiler, by the way. That's on my list somewhere there. But you also had in 2022, you had the U20s that happened. And I was one who was like, okay, let's look at that U20 list. And that had some lists, right? Rita Zuhir. You had Justin Smith. You had a young Jesse Costa there. A young Jesse Costa. You had that's where we met Thiago Coimbra on his way to Europe that year. That's the team that drew Cuba or lost to Cuba and then lost to Guatemala. And since then, us and Guatemala have been nothing but friends, and there's never been any anger or animosity between us ever since. We've always been cool. But I bring this up. We know what our starting lineups were, but now we have to start talking about what our starting 11s we thought would be into that year. So since you are the guest slate, I will make you go first because I'm a good host. I'm a good host. I like to give my guests some opportunities to come through. But back in 2023, what was your team of the future slash team of 2026 you were hoping to see for Canada at this World Cup? You give me the formation and give me all the information.
Well, I don't have a visual a picture unlike you, but we can explain it, you know. So
Oh,
I know
we'll
yours
make it.
started with the four in the back. I went with the typical John Herdman three in the back because I expected Herdman to still be here come 2026 with no debacles, but that all changed. But I had the three in the back. So the
Okay.
goalkeeper. I think the goalkeeper is kind of self-explanatory, and most people probably got that right, or we're thinking we got that right come 2026. Maxime Crepeau, like without the leg break, like you said, he was probably starting at the 2022 World Cup in our minds, you and me, at least one game, or if that third game, if we're mathematically out, then he at second place gets one game at minimum, like you see what most teams at the World Cup do. If they're
Yeah.
completely eliminated, they give the second choice goalkeeper that charity last match. And that would have been Maxime Crepeau, and then the pathway to start in 2026. I just feel like most people probably would have predicted Max to be starting in 2026. I'm assuming that's one we are similar on. And then my back three, this is a bit crazy, but I had Alistair Johnson as the right-sided center back, which I hate saying, but in that three in the back, you need that right-footed center back. And back then, we only had Joel Waterman and Alistair Johnston, and
Mm.
Alistair was never a right-sided center back, and I'll always remember that. But under John Herdman, Alistair played that role, and he was almost a lock at right-sided center back under John Herdman. And his age, his development in the position under Herdman, it looked like he was going to be a lock there for years. So that's who I had at right center back. Down the middle is someone that we're probably going to be similar with in our back lines is Kamal Miller. That center back player pool was probably our most depressing or our weakest in the squad at that time. Like we were all panicking at who's going to come through next, who's going to be our next center back for 2026. What are we going to do? Now you look at it, it's our best position within the squad, and it's mind blowing to see the recruitment, the development at that role. But Kamal was my central center back, and at left side, there you go. Now I can keep up. But at left side of center back, I had Scott Kennedy. Like you said, it was the hype around him coming in. I'm pretty sure he was at Jan Regensburg around then. If that sounds right, because he was bouncing around the random tiers of Germany and the Baltic regions for so long. So he would have been my left side center back at the time. I don't remember how old he was, but he wasn't getting up there in age. And now he's still playing his football, I think the second tier of Austria right now, if my memory is
I
correct.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's done that for a little while, but he's always showed signs, and then he's been hit by big injuries or he's had a mistake in him. But at that time, like we said, the depth of that role just wasn't good enough. So you kind of just felt like he was going to be starting for Canada in that three in the back. And when we're playing with three center backs, we just didn't have the depth for it, which was always confusing to me why Herman went with that formation. But right and left midfield is going to be pretty self-explanatory. It's Alfonso Davies and Tajon Buchanan. I would have liked to go Richie Larea back then, which was someone I was leaning to back then, but Herdman was starting to transition a bit more to Buchanan back then. I had the feeling he was going to develop more, and it suited his role a little bit more when you had Johnston, who could still overlap a little bit. So that's kind of how I felt it would go, but it could have been Larea or Buchanan for me. And in that midfield three, I mean, you couldn't have Atiba Hutchinson there anymore. There was no way Piet was still going to be starting for Canada or as a substitute for us come 2026. So then I had Stefan Eustachio, Ismail Kone, and someone who just missed out on that 2022 squad, or not really just missed out, but was kind of on the bubble in Mathieu Chouanier. He would have been my third midfielder back at CF Montreal at the time. I'm pretty sure he was still at. Our players have bounced around at so many different clubs that it's hard to keep up with anymore. But Stefan Eustachio, Matthew Chouanier, Ismail Kone would have been my midfield three under John Herdman, and three players who could realistically start for Canada if John Herdman was still the manager actually right now. So it's kind of an okay guess, I guess. But up
Fair.
top, I would have gone plain, simple, vanilla, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin. Like at the time, there was no Promise David to be seen. There was no Tani Olawase to be seen. Jason Russell Rowe was in and around it. And the only other guy who I had in my debate in my head was Charles Andres Brim. I was a huge fan of him. I really liked what he was doing. And he was a player who was playing in the Eredivisie. And even now, he is scoring goals, playing well in the Eredivisie, having a decent season. If that was the season he was having back then, he would have been a legitimate conversation to be the third number 9 in this squad.
Hmm.
But it just shows how much his national team has come from where we are to now. But it's a crazy lineup to look at from 2022 to now.
No, that's fair. And again, for those of you who are here, this is what we thought. We made predictions of what we thought the starting 11 for 2026 would be back in 2023. And this is what that is. We're not saying should be the lineup, though I won't lie. Bring back Scott Kennedy. Yeah, he's at Kassupen in Belgium right now. He's got a goal. Man's got a goal. So, hey, I remember watching him and being like, yo, he's big, but he can move. He's not like what we had in Stephen Vittoria, where it was just, hey, he stay at home, he'll get that yellow card to stop a break, but he's gonna be defensively sound. That's it. The man could move. He's like, yo, this could be like that center back who just kind of shows up, and then we realize, oh, he's fast, and then we met Moise Bombito, like, that's
Oh,
fast too. That's fast. The man's got quickness too. Oh, my bad, my bad. But no, that's a good lineup. Mine was I had two and I'm going
that doesn't
to
surprise me.
well because there was one where I was higher, and when I remember I was higher on other people at that point, and I wasn't sure who could have made what at what point. But let's throw this up. So this was mine. So you have to remember this. I think this is the more both have players that I was a little bit higher on or not. So in goalkeeper, I had Owen Goodman. You have to remember back in 2022, he had played some camps. We thought for sure like he was going to come to Canada, and then we went through the entire saga of is he a citizen or is he not? Passports not included. But I in 2022 it was like Owen Goodman's our goalkeeper of the future, or it's Dane St. Clair. I went with Owen because I figured at a higher level he could do well. I didn't foresee Dane having one of the best goalkeepers in MLS for the last few years running, and being in that conversation does carry a lot. I went to a back four because I was all about the 4-2-3-1 overlap. It was where I wanted to live. Davies as your left back, self-explanatory. Scott Kennedy was listen. We have to remember, I was excited about Scott Kennedy back then. Like that was a name. I was like, oh, look at this man could move. And Kamal Miller, by no means is this like. Sometimes you forget when players are around other players how they look, and they look better. Like Kamal Miller looked like an active center back, and he still is. I think sometimes with his awareness, he gets beat on some 1-2s, and then sometimes his lack of spatial awareness gets him. But when we had possession in CONCACAF, and you see Kamal Miller, one armed, one wrist wrapped, making a pass, darting into the middle, like, yo, give me some of this man. Give me some of this man in this. Alistair Johnson as a right back, I think that man deserved to be in that. Here's where it got controversial. I was excited for Kone. I was moving people off lists. I was like, okay, for the next one, I need this. I was like, Stephanie Eustachio was going to be my Jonathan Osorio of 2026, and I was high on Justin Smith. All right, Justin Smith, who was at Nice, who had a good season at Espanyol, and right now is up and down for minutes. He just came from that U20 side where, yes, he's known as he missed the Panenka by hitting it off the crossbar in the U20s. Again, youth tournaments where there's no success. I've never met them, but he was going to be my 6. Kone was going to be my 8, and then Joe David was going to be my 10. Tejan on the right side, and then I was high on Jaden Nelson. Nelson was just starting to get some minutes, but was about to move to Europe for a year and a half, 2 years for him. And I was high on Jaden Nelson back in 2023. I was excited for him to come through. And then I had Daniel Jebison. Remember, this is 2022. Like the man just came from
Bournemouth.
scoring as a 17-year-old in the Prem. We were like, yo, this Eddie Canadian man, you put him with those. That's your nine. We don't have a real 10. Joe David can be our 10. That worked for I was this was lineup number one. And that was the easiest one, right? That was easy lineup number one. The second one, which I was kind of going back and forth with, it's really simple. Simple and similar to that. Same back five. Only difference is a Stachio. And then there I had Luca Kolyosho as a left winger because, again, whoa, what what's a friendly without a work stoppage, right? Like everyone has those, right? Right, Lane? Like everyone has a friendly that's a work stoppage. So everyone does that. So I thought I was high. I thought for sure in 2026 you'd have Daniel Jebison as your starting nine for Canada, and then you'd have. I thought they got him in. I'm like, yo, look, we brought him in for a camp. The left wing is open, and that was the other thing. That year, that's when I changed my tone a lot and said, hey, Davies has to be your fullback. Because if you have a player like Kolyosho there, then let him be the winger, and then you can have Davies as your fullback. Then that overlap will be there, and then you have Alistair and Tajon on the other side, and then Scott Kennedy and Kamal Miller. It's crazy looking at it now. We see what we assume the starting 11 will be. Outside of right now, the only lock that we have is Davies as your fullback, as your left back. Everything else is completely wrong in the back line, right? Right. Derek
Al-
Cornelius, right?
Alistair Johnson
Cornelius,
a lock.
go, 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 go.
Alistair Johnson would be a lock.
I think he should be a lock. I can entertain the conversations with if you want to put Nico Segura there, or if you want to go, and be like, well, he's played so well for a year. Richie should start at the right back. As long as I have one that's fresh on the bench, I don't want a lineup where all three of our fullbacks that we play are starting. So that's translation. No, stop Davies at the left mid. I'm not living that life. I cannot. But yeah, if you say that, like look at the center backs. Kamal Miller was we thought okay that's the building block and then we go from there, right? And then Kamal Miller is on the bubble to make the squad. He's not even like to
It's
me
not even on my bubble.
he's not on some people's bubbles, but I mean look at the depth at center back. We went from having okay it's Scott Kennedy and Kamal Miller to now you have Derek Cornelius, Moise Bombito when healthy, Luke DeFugel, who is older, wiser beyond his years, Alfie Jones, fresh Alfie Jones, Joel Waterman, Jamie Knight LaBelle, and then you get to Kamal Miller. That would, if you told me that in 6 years, that would have been wild, but I would have been excited for that. That would have been like, hey, that's development. The midfield, I think we all kind of looked at it the same way. Kone starting, Stachio starting, um, Tajon starting. It was just a left and who you're starting nine. Back in 23, I have friends who can quote me on this. I was like, okay, we get if we're gonna move people, I would love for Laren to be my first nine off the bench if something's not working, because then you have like Jebison, and then you have David, and then you have Laren coming off the bench if something's not working. Now look at us. We got Jebison is kind of in the squad, but on the bubble. You got so many Davids, you don't know what to do with them. You got a Tanny who's got the pace. Looking where we were 4 years ago to where we are today, it's both a good reminder that hey, development comes out of different places, right? We got players coming from MLS drafts. We got players coming from European academies, right? We have players who have played for us at youth, and we have other players who never had the opportunity to play for us, but they came in. We got players who found out that someone's aunt's mother's cousin is got the maple in the blood, so let's bring in Alfie Jones. All respect to Alfie Jones. I'm sure it's not that complicated, but look at where we were to where we are now, and I think that's what makes it exciting. And that's what makes it great. Let's get these overlays off. Ooh, let's look at beautiful faces. But I find that fascinating. And then that's what makes it great when you look at these 4 years, and then you look at the next 4 years, what it could be, how it's looking from there. Oh, actually, that's a good segue. Next 4 years. Have you taken a look at the kid at CONCACAF's new World Cup uh, qualifying format?
I've heard it's not great, but I don't really haven't really dived into it yet.
Sir, let's have a conversation about this. It's it reads as the most CONCACAF thing,
That doesn't surprise me.
right? And that is the thing. And my when I say the most CONCACAF thing, I simply say this: I CONCACAF needs to simplify things. We don't need to complicate things. Just make it simple. Because if it's simple, we can all follow, and then we can all make things work a lot easier. And when we all understand what's happening, we can all get excited. Not like, how do you qualify for a youth tournament in CONCACAF? The answer, uh, choose. U17s win a group for the men. Women's championship round. U20s championship round plus top two make the Olympics, and the top four make the World Cup. And I'm just like, make it simple. Make it simple. Okay, let me pull this up here because it it just came up. I got to get through all this U17.
Talking about CONCACAF to wrap up the 90 minutes. Who would have guessed?
What? Listen, we should have started off with it so we could have got all my anger and frustration out of it.
All that
But
built up, pushed down aggression.
this is true. This is true. CONCACAF series, blah 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 series. Nobody. Oh, now they're doing a CONCACAF series because FIFA's doing a series. Let's get these teams and have them all hosted in one spot, which works. I do like that. But effectively, they are narrowing its three groups. CONCACAF gets 6 spots going to the next World Cup. And so once you get to the final round, it'll be home and away. But they're gonna rank the team. So team one goes into group one, team two goes into group two, and then team three goes into group three, and and I understand why you do it, but I need stakes, man. Like I need 1 year for no reason other than chaos. U.S., Canada, and Mexico, and then throwing Costa Rica are all in the same group, and you just listen. Two of us are going, and one of us isn't. This is life. I need those types of scenarios where it's just, and I get it. Every confederation wants to put their best foot forward. Everyone wants to make sure you get your best teams going because they're not doing the hex, they're not doing the ultra anymore, and that kills so many interesting. That's where we created rivalries, or in Canada, this is where we purge demons, right? We have to go to Honduras and exhume 8-10-1. We have to exhume that in a game that mattered. And now, yes, we might get Honduras, but I need a World Cup qualifying in CONCACAF where all the top teams are in one group, and it's just, hey, bring your A game and let's see what we're all about. Because at that point, yes, will it be fair? Will the Confederation bring their best teams? Probably not. But hey, draw them in a pot, one pot, and let's see what happens with it. I've missed it. I won't lie. Yes, following African qualifiers has been great for me because I get to live post through my Ghanaianness. But I've missed it. I miss the stress. I miss the stress. But I desperately need the high stress of World Cup qualifying because it's just not been the same without it, and I miss it. But let me see if I can find it. While I'm looking for that, what you got coming up on your channel as over the next couple of weeks for you?
Breaking down where are they now? Our squad from 2022. Where are they now in 2026 in the lead up to the World Cup? Such as players retired, players injured, players with new squads. Kind of looking at more in-depth conversations around our team. Should Marcelo Flores be starting? Should Kyle Larin make the roster? Should he be in the starting lineup? Kind of the more in-depth hitting questions around our team. The breaking news, because there's still always transfers going on around Canada soccer, of course, because we're a year-round product with the CPL, the MLS, and European
Yes.
football, right? So transfers can happen anytime for us, and yeah, just the more in depth content, the better. Trying to get more YouTube shorts out as well. Trying to keep up with everything. CANMNT.
No, that's fair. Which reminds me now. How did you find the CPL teams at in Concacaf Champions Cup? Their performances. Right, we saw.
Because is Atletico Ottawa left?
It's only Ottawa that's left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Forge was very respectable with what they did, especially at home. Like, yes, we
Mhm.
could talk about the weather, but what they had 8 starters, I want to say, from Tigres in their first match in Hamilton. Like, that's an impressive result, no matter the weather conditions, no matter what excuses L3 or Tigres want to use in this conversation against Forge away in Canada, especially when Forge is in preseason still. They haven't even had their warm up to the regular season. Tigres are flying in form in Liga MX with Marcel Flores playing some great football. I think Forge did a great job with what they're running into and how they always seem to face Mexican giants to start off their year in the CONCACAF Champions League. Like, it's such a difficult ask for a team in the CPL to play Tigres, to play Chivas, to play all those big teams. They've done very well this year, I think, especially going to Mexico. And yes, they were down 2-0. They get that 2-1. It was so disappointing to see them get scored on immediately and the tie just get
Yeah.
wiped away, because it was there for them if they just locked in or focused, for a lack of better words. And Vancouver FC was unfortunate to see. Of course, they got wiped aside. They got kind of pummeled. And I know some people were saying it was a good result in Vancouver to lose 3-0, which no, it really isn't. Like, no football team's going to be like, yes, we got beat 3-0 and didn't really put up much of a fight at all. Like, for the wages, for the salary cap, for the amount you could spend, sure, it's a respectable 3-0, but any team isn't going to be proud of losing 3-0 and knowing you're realistically, mathematically out of it going to the second leg. So I kind of was a bit disappointed with the talk of being so proud of how they did in the first leg for Vancouver. But realistically, when you're the worst team in the CPL from the previous year and you're
Mm.
not even into the next season, fair play. But I thought I would have given Forge like a B. I would have given Vancouver FC probably a C. And I think Ottawa are going to have a good chance as well. They have a great squad in terms of the CPL,
Yeah.
and hopefully they can have a good run or at least a good first leg.
No, that's fair. Like, and whenever I see Forge go out respectfully, it makes me miss. And I kind of went on a rant with one of my videos before. It was like, it makes me miss like that qualification round where you get to see like the teams come through. And like, I don't want to like, and I know I've talked to people and people have asked me like, why does Canada get so many slots and then just loses in the first round? I'm like, well, someone has to be the Romanian team in Champions League, so that'll be us. All credit to Romanian teams. But I think having those teams having to go through, like I remember like Pacific going through that after they won, because I think when before they redrew it, the CPL winner would go through basically the Europa League, the Champions League, or like the Confederation League. I forget what it was called there, but then they would have to go play like home and away matches, and things were getting moved around. So yeah, you saw Pacific made it like I think 3 rounds in before they finally lost. I think it would have been to a Costa Rican side, but still, I think those types of experiences that helps your team, that builds the brand, and that widens like the awareness. Like, hey, you have yes your Forge and stuff. I think they miss having that, and I think Forge was a team that whenever they would finish top two, they'd be able to push through and have good runs in those moments. I think it's a competition that misses that, especially now when you see them going to the European model, the European schedule for the MLS. I wonder if they look at that again and say, maybe that's something we want to do to grow the game out a little bit or to expand it so that by the time it starts, or at least they deepen championship cup or continental football for them. Like, because man, I think Vancouver being there is a great story because the Whitecaps won a lot and then they got bumped up because CP the Canadian Championship winner. But to see like a Vancouver then now have to go, you have your league games, but then Vancouver FC has to fly down to like say like Jamaica and take on one of the Caribbean teams and move on to the next round. And then from there, if they win that, then they play like a Costa Ricans or and something like that, right? I think we missed that aspect because I think there is enough football that we could watch it, and I think if they wanted to grow it instead of just and it's another thing where you're so used to the Champions League in Europe, it's so drawn out. Champions Cup and CONCACAF literally feels like it starts in April and it finishes, and that's exaggeration, but it starts in February and it's done in May. Like the Champion Cup championship is the weekend before teams let players go for for the World Cup this year, right? It's that condensed. Whereas like in Europe, it's starting from October, November, December, January, February, and then you get to that March, like it's a full year. I think they could do well to broaden it out and kind of stretch out. Do you think so, or did I just go on a rant for no reason here?
No, I think you're right, and also I think we could benefit from a second tier, not just the top level like what we have now with the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Why don't we make a not like kind of like what they do in Europe with the Europa League? Why don't we have
Yeah.
that in CONCACAF? Like I've been thinking about doing a video on the channel, like how I talk about more long, in-depth content, doing what it would look like for a second tier of CONCACAF Champions League or CONCACAF Europa League, like how that would look, what teams would be in it, how competitive it would be. Because I think it would be huge for the mid-table of Mexican sides, the mid-table of MLS teams, the CPL teams would be able to challenge more. I could be huge for your Central American sides as well. I think it would be a major thing, and then you have your winner from that competition go into the next competition next year, like they do in Europe. I think it would be a huge step forward for CONCACAF to be able to develop those teams, have another goal in mind, a prize at the end, a trophy that they can fight for, another continental title that because realistically are a CPL side going to win the Champions Cup? More than likely
More
not.
likely no. Yeah.
Yeah, we would all love to say yes, like there's that chance, but no. Like having that second title is I think it'd be huge. Like we saw, for instance, with the Conference League in England when West Ham won it, how massive it was for a side like West Ham to go out and win the Europa Conference League. Everyone looked at it as a small title, but it was huge for a side like West Ham to say we've won a European title. Can you imagine if Pacific or Vancouver or Ottawa won a continental title? It would be massive for Canadian soccer and for a casual to say we've won a continental title. But I think, like you say, changing the calendar would be especially huge to broaden the change in Canada, especially with the MLS changing schedule. I think it could really help the CPL if they can do that as well, especially for sides like Forge, Ottawa, Cavalry, who have built such a reputation now of making the Champions Cup for so long that if you change the calendar for them to actually have the preseason to build into the year, then you're ready for when the Champions Cup comes so that they're not walking into it fresh faced. And yes, they've had probably warm up games against university sides, against League One teams to prepare the best they can, but they're not getting the full Cavalry. You're not getting the full Ottawa in preparation to play in these tournaments. And who knows, maybe Forge could have gotten a 3-2 or a 3-1 against Tigres and could have nicked a goal in Hamilton if they were in full fitness, full preparation. And that is something we'll never know with this calendar style. And if they switch, like MLS is switching, I think it would really help the league just in player progression because we've seen them move to Sweden for so many times now with Matteo Di Bria,
Yeah.
Sam Salter, right? Because of the calendars. You switch it, who knows? Maybe they're moving to the MLS. Maybe they're moving to Scotland, England more often and fighting to get that jump. But I think those are two real major conversations around the CPL as well as the continental titles.
No, and that's a very fair point in terms of the scheduling, how it works out, and we talked about there. Without further ado, let's talk about this new qualifying format because, well, let's run through this real quick before we wrap it up here. So it starts next year, not 26. Also, fun note, starting after this World Cup, the September window is a 4-match window. So bigger squads, maybe more homestands. I would argue, does this open the door for what I would call the micro tournaments, right? Let's get like four countries together and let's play each other three times and have a friend, or just play three games. Let's have another Canadian Shield, or as the woman said, another a He Believes Cup, if you want to. Someone called the She Believes Cup. But yeah, the male version, the He Believes Cup. So that it starts here, and we'll go through it. It's the lowest 16 teams who featured there will play each other one home in a Swiss style, each playing four games, home and away. Okay, no one cares about that. Okay, World Cup. Why? I always go to the wrong thing off the bat. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean Swiss style? Okay, there we go. So 2027, October 2027, 22 teams. So teams rank 14 to 35 in FIFA rankings based off of the association. So the worst teams will be in 11 pairings, and they'll play each other home and away. Aggregate winner moves on. So 11 teams move on from that window next year in their first two games. And then immediately after that, this is where like CONCACAF doesn't want to milk anything. CONCACAF is just like, listen, what CONCACAF takes an orange, squeezes like that's the juice you get. Let's go. Um, Next round is right after that. The 11 winners from round one, and then the top 13 ranked teams will be divided into 24 groups. That's a lot. Into six groups of four, with each team facing every other team in its group, home and away. So they'll have three matches home and three matches away. At the conclusion of round two, the six group winners and the six runners up, 12 teams total, will advance to the final round. And then the final round gets going the next year. So literally next year, at the end of September, we will know if someone's going to the World Cup or who has a chance to go or not. Just again, they don't care about just milking drama. They're just like, hey, here's the orange. Okay, cool. There's the juice. So that happens, and then the final 12 are into groups, three groups of four. Top two teams move on, and the next best third place teams move towards the IC playoff, which is at the conclusion there. The two best third place finishers will advance to the new CONCACAF World Cup play-in. The new CONCACAF play-in will take place in November 29. The play-in is between the two best third place finishers and will be contested in a direct elimination format of home and away, with the aggregate winner securing the berth. So only one playoff team for CONCACAF for the new intercontinental playoff. We'll have to take a look at that as it goes. But based off of that, again, next year, they play the 6 games home and away for the rest of the year. So you have 2 at the end of the September window, and then 2 at the November window. And then from there, the March window, I believe, is where the last ones go. And then after that, if you're up, you're up, you're not. How does that sound to you?
It's the most typical CONCACAF thing, right? You're straight to the point. Here, wham bam, thank you, it's done. It's refreshing to see that they get right to the point, but in a sense, I like what we had in the past, where you have your long drawn out process, you have the stakes, you have the competitiveness, you go away to everyone, and it's a battle. This, I think, will be very direct, very, I wouldn't say simple, but easier for the Canadian national team of how this path will be for them. Like, no, it's a lot. Like, it's tough because you want to see more competition. You want to see it tougher. You want to see us go to Honduras, like you said, go to El Salvador, go to Costa Rica. We very might well do that, but you lose the hype that we had before of playing in a waterlogged pitch away in Honduras with fans on top of you, in Costa Rica or in Jamaica where the field is battered, or in an Azteca situation. Like, I don't think we're going to have those same high stake environments against a Mexico, against the USA. That's not going to be possible. So we're going to be facing teams that are, for Canada, where we should be expected to beat every single time. And I just wish we had what we had in the past. I think CONCACAF's trying to make it easy. I think they're trying to make it quick. I think they're trying to simplify it, like you say, for the best teams to make it, to put our best foot forward, which is good for the federation. Like it makes sense for CONCACAF. Like you want your best teams there. Like it's a better look for you. But you would like more competition. You would like it more difficult, I'm sure, especially for Jesse Marsh, to see more competitive matches and difficult situations for his players going into a World Cup.
No, it'll definitely be interesting, and I will never say a team is. Listen, I've seen teams who are supposed to beat teams not beat teams, so nothing is a given. Okay, I've learned that the hard way. Okay, like see, this is where if I say something, then they say I'm like, look, watch African qualifiers and tell me that you're supposed to beat a team and then you don't beat them. Ghana drew Chad. Okay, they drew Chad. Did it happen? Did it hurt them at the end? No. Nigeria versus Lesotho. Did it hurt them in the end? Yeah, it did. But you can't take those games for granted. I just wish, like I said, let's draw it out. Let's have time to breathe with it, but we won't have that. But that will be everything for today on the Rise. Thank you again for being with us. It's been a great time. We just got to the 90. The Ugandan ref has called for the game. The game is over. No need for additional time. We are done today. I'll be back on Thursday. You'll see clips of this going out here throughout the week, but I'll be back on Thursday talking probably some more world things because whatever's happening with WAFCON is really fun. Because are they hosting or are they not hosting? They're hosting. It's so funny how a slip up at the podium created a narrative that people fed into, and then it became a whole thing of we're still yelling at each other on the internet. But speaking of WAFCON and women's football, if you haven't already, I have a conversation with WOSO North and CFCW, so that's Chelsea Women's North, where we talk about all things domestic soccer here in Canada and then talk about what's going on with Chelsea and their women's team this year. So if you want to check it out, feel free to do that. It's on my YouTube channel. Then Lane, he's got his stuff coming up. Remembering what used to be 2022 players, where are they now? coming to him and all the breaking news. But guys, thank you for stopping by today. If you're on the rewatch, leave your thoughts, leave anything in the comments below. And as always, we'll stop talking here. Thanks for being here.